Lastly, we completed the creation of custom data source based on R3. Now we are going to learn how to replicate this custom data source from ECC into our BW system, R3 or ECC, whatever it may be, into our BW system, and then loading data into our BW. Why? Because in our earlier sessions, as we discussed, the data will be available in SAP R3 system, and we will create data sources on top of our tables, and then using this data source we will bring data into BW. Now we are done with the first part. Now we are going to the second part, like bringing data source to BW and then extracting data from R3 into our BW database, because R3 is a separate database, BW is a separate database. Okay, now let's look into this one. Let me close few here sessions by going to /n RSA3. See, already I have one screen here. If I want to open new screen, I need to provide /o. But if I want to refresh this screen with a new transaction code, then I need to give /n. /n for new means the same screen, new screen will come. Okay, a new transaction you can open without closing this one. /n RSA3. So from RSA3 I can see this data source extraction and all. And one more thing, one more T code which I am going to teach is RSA2. What was the T code? RSA2. So what is RSA2? It is one second, data source repository. So by going to RSA2, by providing the data source name, you can find all of its properties, means main information. So this is the data source name, description, and under which what kind of data source, transactional data or attribute data, text data source, under which component we created, and and then in the extraction tab you can see this data source was created using the option transparent table or DB view. And this is the extractor, means which table we are using for this data source, and what was the system generated extract structure name, and and further options like if we provide any generic delta and all, we can see those here. And under field section we can see what are the columns this data source is having. So currently this data source is having these columns. Out of 8 columns, these 3 we are using for the selection. It means all the data source related information we can see by coming into this RSA2. We can understand easily. Okay, you can look it from RSO2 also, but RSA2 which I preferred. Okay, now this data source is there. Now let's see how we can bring this data source into BW. Okay, since we are learning this on BW on HANA or BW for HANA, so I am going to HANA Studio now. Okay, since we are opening this HANA Studio first time in our in our BW sessions, what I will do is I will remove all from here, and then I will show you it. I will give you a quick overview of this one. Just a second. Okay, so when you open HANA Studio, mostly you will get a blank screen. Okay, you may not get these screens also. This is HANA Studio. In the HANA Studio, we must look into we must learn few navigations. Okay, on the right hand side, top side. Okay, these are called whatever icons you are seeing. These are all nothing but what perspective. Okay, you see when I click on this plus symbol, it is asking open perspective. Okay, SAP is giving different perspectives for a different kind of operations. To work on BW side, it is giving BW modeling perspective. To work on ABAP related things, it is giving ABAP perspective. To work on HANA modeling like creation of calculation views and all, we go to SAP HANA modeler perspective. And to create table functions and all, this one. As of now, since we wish to learn BW on HANA or before HANA, so now we have a need to open BW modeling here. So we are going for BW modeling perspective. When you click on this select button, click on open, then automatically this perspective will be added here. Okay, if anything is not there, you can add by going to this plus symbol. So when I click on this BW modeling perspective system, on the left hand side, if you see on the left hand side, this project explorer will be highlighted. Okay, for example, if I select on this HANA modeler perspective, you see the left side screen little bit got updated with the systems tab, because HANA modeler was related, when we are working with HANA modeler, we need to work with this systems tab, because our system will be added under this particular tree. But when we work on BW modeling, then we need to work on this project explorer tab. Okay, so currently it was blank, so we need to add our system here. How to add our system to the project explorer? Before adding here, first we need to add our system in the SAP GUI. We already have our system available in the SAP GUI. So simply now what we are going to do, since we are trying to do BW development, go to this this drop down and create BW project. Because you wish to work on BW, you must create a BW project. Okay, and then you need to select your BW system. So this is my BW system, and clicking on next, and then I need to provide my BW user ID, password and all. So once you everything was given correctly, then the system will be added here. You see, when I expand it, I will get like this three folders: favorite section, repository, and data sources. Okay, and one point to make a note of it. In real time, you will have separate ECC system, separate BW system, like that. Separate systems will be there in real time. But this is my own demo, own sandbox. So I have both systems installed on the same same system, means same software. Multiple components are installed on the same database. Okay, so just don't get confused. Simply just we must learn the topic. So coming back to the topic, I added my BW system here. Now once we added BW system, we can see these three folders. If these three folders are you are able to see, it means it's a BW system. If you add any ABAP kind of thing, you have different kind of folders here. Okay, so now open this BW data sources. Go to data sources. In our now what is our requirement? Our requirement is to bring this data source from R3 system into BW. That is our requirement. So I log into my BW system, and then I need to replicate my data source here. Okay, but in BW4 HANA, let me open the BW system once here, and let's go to RSA1. RSA1 is nothing but BW workbench. Okay, on your BW system, you need to open RSA1. RSA1 is nothing but data warehouse workbench. Okay, so on your RSA1, if you go to this source systems tab, here you can see the different kind of source systems. Okay, on BW4 HANA, from the HANA database point of view, we can bring data sources to BW in two different ways. One is using ODP, another one is using normal connection. Okay, nowadays we are always using ODP connections in the BW side. Okay, it means whatever data source you created in your ECC system or R3 system, this data source you must expose it through ODP enabling. Okay, how we can do? You see, I'm talking about ODP. Okay, ODP SAP BW extractors. So okay, this is because we are very fresh to this BW, we may get a little bit confused, but there is nothing confusion. After creating a data source, we must do one activity, that is nothing but enabling this data source for ODP extraction. How we can do this data source for ODP extraction? We have one program. Go to the T code SE38. What was the T code which I am discussing now? SE38. SC38 for the program. You see, ABAP editor program. Here, yes, RODPS OS underscore expose. This was the program. Using this program, I can enable my data source for ODP extraction. Click on execute button. Provide your data source name here. So what was my data source name? My data source name was this one. So you must do it in the R3 system. On the ECC, go to SC38, provide your program name, and then click on execute, provide your data source name, and then click on release data source. If you click on release data source, you will get this kind of screen. So release data source, this is the data source name, long description, short description, click on OK. If you click on do you want to release the selected one data source, click on yes. It is asking for the request. So I'm selecting, one of my TR, click on OK. That's it. Data source was released for ODP extraction. Okay. How to know this data source was released for ODP or not? By coming to, RSA6 and select expanding our tree and, if you find out your data source here, if there is a checkbox like this, you see tick mark. These tick marks are nothing but, ODP enabled data sources. If this is not there, then it is not enabled for ODP. Okay, then that part is done. Now going back to our HANA Studio. In the HANA Studio, under data sources folder, go to ODP SAP because ODP enabled SAP data sources. ODP SAP means under which one? Okay, this is my system, right? So I will get to know which is the correct one and all. Just a second. So under this data source section, we go to ODP SAP folder. Under this folder, this is our source system name. Okay, so whichever source system you created your data source, you need to navigate to that source system. Under, after going to this source system, if you expand, this is your nothing but your application component tree. Okay, under this application component tree, when we creating our data source, we given it under SD. Correct. Where is this SD? Under SAP R3. Under this we have SD. We created our data source here. So now similarly we need to navigate to the same path here. This is SAP. Under SAP this is SAP R3. Under SAP R3 we have SD. So under this your data source will be there, but it won't show currently. You have to replicate it. Okay, what is replication? Right click on this component. So we call this as a application component. Okay, right click here, replicate. You need to go to this option replicate. When you go to replicate option, system will fetch all the data sources which are available under this SD application component. So these are the data sources which are currently available under this application component. Okay, but we are not required, all these are not required for us. So first what we need to do, we need to deselect display data source, means unselect all the data source. By clicking on this button you can do it. And if you see here, this is the create button, which means these are the new data sources. Equal to means this data source is already available in our BW, and not equal to means this is the data source available in our BW and ECC, but both versions are not same. Means there are some changes either in ECC compared to ECC to our BW. Okay, and wherever we have this red color, these are in inactive state mostly. Okay, so now our requirement is we need to replicate our custom created data source. So this is the data source which we created. So select this data source and then click on next button. So on the next button, replicate data source, it is asking activate new data source. Yes, after replicating, I am asking system to activate the data source also, and then click on finish button. Now after doing this, you can see that particular data source is visible here. Okay, so system is creating background one job, and if I click on refresh button, your job finished. Now click on close here. Now if right click on this application component, click on this refresh. When you do refresh, then you can see your table here. You see ZDS SRG build book data source. This was the symbol of your data source. Okay, of a data source. and this is your technical name of which you created. Double click on it, then you can see it here. So this is the data source name, this is the description of our data source, and if I go to extraction tab, here on the extraction tab it is we are delta only, we have full load something, all these options will come. You see extractor specific properties, it was transactional data, and if I go to field section, these are the fields which are created, which are available under this data source. Okay, now replication of data source is completed. Now what is next part? Next we wish to bring the data from R3 to BW. So how to bring data? Before bringing data, we must learn few things. Okay, if you create your data source under ODP folder, under this ODP SAP, you cannot create info package for these things. These are, if you want to create info package, we must extract this data source under different folder. Like we need to extract it under SAP folder. Okay, so now what we are going to do, yeah, then let's stop this one here, double click on it, go to extraction tab, just a second. See. One minute. Overview. Yeah, that's it. So now in this particular topic, we learned till replication, because in order to show data, to bring data from ECC like R3 into our BW, we must create one target, where to load this data. We cannot see data directly here by using ODP option. So we need something, we need something to load it, because we not yet covered that topic. So I am stopping our, topic here. I cannot do data preview also from here, I guess. So yeah, I'm stopping our topic here and stopping recording. Now loading data into PSA, into PSA, we will discuss it in a different session. So now providing the assignment for today on what we learned. Okay, so far we learned how to create a data source in SAP R3 and how to replicate the data source into BW using ODP SAP connection. Now going to the assignment section. So let's call this session as a day 2 now. Day 3 assignment. Okay, so what is our assignment today? So in our last assignment, so in our last assignment, I asked you to create tables like ZEMP_1 and ZEMP_2 for 2 users. So I asked you to create a table. Now today's assignment is to create a data source on top of this table. Okay, so now I'm copying this technical name here and then assignment. Create a transactional data source on top of table ZEMP_1. So this was the table name. Okay, so when I said create a data, so transactional data source, like I will provide the technical name also here for easy. Okay, so the data source technical name must be ZDS underscore, and now give a 2 letter. Okay, I am giving XX here, but this X and X will be replaced with any 2-digit 2 letters to identify the objects with your name. Okay, for I given SR for my name Srinivas. In the same way you provide your own 2-letter word, okay, to identify your objects, and then followed by table name. So GEMP_1. If it is _2, then you provide GEMP_2 your table name. So this was the data source name. Okay, and then so second point is enable this enable this data source for ODP extraction using program. What was the program we are using to expose it to ODP? So I went to SC38. This was the program. So using this program, provide the data source name and enable it for ODP extraction. And what was the third point? Replicate this data source in BW side. Okay. So now when creating this data source, under application component, I will provide you application component also, component SD. So replicate this data source in BW side under SD component. Anyway, it will be available under SD only. So this is your assignment for tomorrow. Okay. So whatever you learned today, the same topic you are doing the assignment so that you will get some hands-on experience on it. Okay. I'm stopping recording.